Well, guys, the end of 2024 is fast approaching, and it's getting to that stage where it's time to look back and look at the year that we've had. So I'll be breaking this reflection up into 3 videos. One that we're doing today, which is the top 5 discoveries of 2024. So these were books, series, authors that were pleasant surprises that I didn't plan on reading this year that just took me by surprise and I thoroughly enjoyed. The next video we'll be going into is my top 5 authors that I discovered in 2024. So authors I hadn't read before this year that just blew me away, and they are now my favorite writers of all time. And there'll be no crossovers between these first 2 lists. If I include an author today, they will not be getting included in the next one, so we can cover a few more. But the authors I'm mentioning today are all very good authors. Then the last video to wrap up everything of 2024 will be my top 10 books of the year. So just the best 10 books. We'll see how they rank out. I haven't even started looking at that one yet, as I've still got plenty of reading to go yet for the year. But I can do this video, the top 5 discoveries of the year, because in December, I am only reading 1 new book. So I feel pretty confident that if I mention what that book is now, there will be no other new entries we have to talk about, because all the other books I'll be reading in December are sequels to series I've already started. So the new book I will be starting in December with a bunch of you is The Dragon Bone Chair, Book 1 of Memory, Sorrow and Thorn by Tad Williams. This one is our book club read on Fable. Completely free book club. If you want to check it out, the link is down in the description. I'd love to have you along with us. I've been wanting to jump into this series for a long time. It has been described to me as a little bit of a crossover between A Song of Ice and Fire and The Realm of the Elderlings, with not quite the same level of character work, but still really good characters. That makes complete sense to me, as those are 2 of my favorite writers for character. So to be as good as those, it's almost impossible. But to still capture their vibe, fantastic. And yes, I understand that this book was written before those 2 and inspired those 2, but that's just the comparisons I've been given. So that's how I'm able to make it, because I haven't been able to read the books that inspired this one, apart from Lord of the Rings, of course. But I'm very excited to read something that is highly influential to the genre and all the authors that I like to read. So if you'd like to jump in on that, link down in the description. But guys, before we go any further, let me know what are the top books that you discovered this year. And while you're down there, like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. We talk fun fantasy things here. I'll let you get back to the video. My top 5 discoveries for the year of 2024. Number 5, we have The Will of the Many, Book 1 of the Hierarchy Trilogy by James Islington. Now this series is currently only 1 book. There's going to be 2 more though. Book 2 has already been sent to the editors and it could well be out next year. Now I believe James is a fellow Aussie, so when I saw his new book blowing up the internet, I had to check it out. I didn't really know what this one was about until I dove into it. So we've got some Roman-inspired world building. We've got a modern, fast-paced writing style that's still very rich and descriptive. 1 main POV that's easy to follow. And the world that we're in, there is a magic system where you can kind of give your essence, your will to somebody, and that gives them extra abilities. And one of the religions of this world has kind of made a political system known as the hierarchy, where you give your will to someone, they give it to someone up, and the system is built so the will of the many is in the hands of the few. So a few people have a lot of power, and a lot of people are giving away their power to those people. So it makes a hierarchy-based site. So hence the name of the trilogy, The Hierarchy. So in this series and in this book in particular, our main POV is a young guy, a young prince from the last country that was to be taken over by this new hierarchy government that has just dominated the lands. They've taken over, they've got a strong military, and they just took over everyone that wasn't doing things the way they were. So now they pretty much have control over everywhere, which makes for a really interesting dynamic. What happens in a government when the military was the main driving force for conquer, 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 but now the conquering is done? That makes for some really interesting politics in this book, where it's like, okay, now that we've finished conquering, do we need to give the military all this power? Because there's no real need for a big, strong military when there is no other threats. So now the religious guys maybe want some power, and our main character, who's kind of just trying to stay out of the way, stay hidden, he's very capable. So he gets caught up by people's attentions. He doesn't go unnoticed because of his competence. And he finds himself in an academy setting, one of the most prestigious academies in this world, in this hierarchy, in this system. And he finds himself right in the middle of this political push and pull going on. and he's still just trying to find a way to break this system, to end the hierarchy, but there doesn't really seem to be much hope of that at the moment, but you can kind of feel that there's inklings of things going on. This makes for one hell of a compelling read. James is a fantastic writer, and I'm so happy to have discovered this year. If you've read it already, please let me know what your thoughts are of it. And if you're looking for a just super compelling, very interesting, very fresh sort of fantasy to read, you might want to try The Will of the Many by James Islington. So with that, we'll jump into number 4 on this list, which is The Broken Empire, or Mark Lawrence as a whole. I did read Broken Empire very early on this year, and I'm very disappointed that I haven't had the time to get back to reading more Mark Lawrence, as he really got my attention with his Broken Empire trilogy. He's just got that dark, dry British humour that will have you laughing through very serious scenes that I absolutely love in an author. That same sort of thing that Abercrombie and Kristoff do really well with their humour in their writing. But it's not a comedy that he's writing. It's dark, it's serious, it's fun, it's gritty, grimdark fantasy. It's a good time. So with his Broken Empire trilogy, we're in a really fun setting. We're in a post-apocalyptic Europe. So there has been a really advanced society, but something happened and it's basically leveled it back to a medieval society. But there's still traces of that really technologically advanced society there, which makes for some interesting magics and things of the world that I just haven't experienced in any other sort of world that I've read before. Now, what made the Broken Empire trilogy so fun is it was just a nice, simple setting. We had one POV. Book 1 is called Prince of Thorns. Book 2 is called King of Thorns. Book 3 is called Emperor of Thorns. So you can kind of see the progression that's going on through this series. And every book is about 5 years apart. And we get flashbacks of what's been going on the last 5 years to set up our main character, Jorg Angrath, to see how he's going to advance himself on this progression. So there's just always fun things going on. Jorg, our main character, is quite the menace and is quite the evil little prick. So it's just very interesting to see this story. And yeah, this dark fantasy was an absolute pleasure to discover. So I definitely recommend it. If you like morally ambiguous main characters and don't mind just an evil little teenage boy just causing havoc. And I'm very excited to be checking out more Mark Lawrence next year, because he is because I hear he's quite a dynamic author, and he goes and tries something new every time he writes a series. So he keeps his dark, gritty writing, but goes into different genres. Doesn't just keep it in the grim dark. He goes into lit fic and other sorts of things. So I'm very excited to see his talents in other fields. Now, coming at number 3, I've pulled the old sneaky on you. I've got 2 series at number 3. So series 1, I've just talked about quite a bit recently, so I didn't want to do a whole video section about it. And that's the Illuminae Files by J. Kristoff and Amie Kaufman. So these are 2 Australian authors that have written a couple YA sci-fi series together. And the Illuminae Files is written in a very fun format where it's a bunch of hacked documents. So these are things like interviews, medical reports, spaceship communications, AI thought logs, and just all these interesting things that make for a really fun, compelling read, or listen as it's a full cast audiobook that's done in just the most fun way. And despite the YA tone, everything else in this book is done absolutely perfectly. Really good characters despite the weird storytelling format. So if you're looking for something fun to break up your serious reads, you'll still get a serious read, but you'll get a fun little different way of reading a book that'll just refresh your mind. So the Illuminae Files should be fresh on your mind. But the other book at number 3 I wanted to talk about and give some more time to, because I haven't talked about it in quite a while, and that's the Elric Saga by Micheal Moorcock. So I've got these 3 big chunky books down here, and these books are all comprised of about 3 to 4 stories each, as the Elric books are pretty short. These are dark fantasy stories that started getting written in the 60s. So we get quite a variety in the types of stories we get. The writing, the structures all change a little bit throughout the series. I've only read the first book and a half myself, so I've still got plenty to go. But this was just really fun fantasy. It's really interesting world building. Our main character, Elric, is kind of from like a fantasy race that's similar to elves. They're not elves, they're connected to magic. They come from this isle where they have dragons, and they used to be all powerful and just rule over the entire world. But now they just stay on their little island of Melnibone. And yes, that pronunciation was horrible. I'm really sorry, guys. But these are fun books. It's simple dark fantasy questing stories. So our main character Elric is just going on quests. He's badass, he's a mage, he's got his talking sword, and he's going around this really interesting world. There's a lot of magic, and he's just going on quests. They're nice short reads, and I can't wait to dive further into these books next year. And also, there's some really fun character dynamics and politics that you wouldn't expect in these shorter stories. So yes, great job, Micheal Moorcock. I'll definitely be continuing these books. Then coming at number 2, we don't have a book or a series. We have the author Andy Peloquin. Those of you who have been watching my channel for a while know that Andy took over my channel by storm at the start of the year. I just couldn't put down his books. I couldn't stop reading them. Andy just specializes in writing dark fantasy assassin stories centered around assassins most of the time. So his main series, Darkblade, is basically John Wick meets fantasy. We've got a half demon assassin just going around messing things up, but he's kind of got a pretty good moral base and kind of tries to do the right thing most of the time. But he's dark, he's menacing. He's also got a talking blade, and Darkblade and all of other Andy's series are just very compelling. There's always something going on. There's always an air of mystery. There's always something gripping you into the next chapter. And his writing is very easy to read, and it's got that cinematic feel that like a John Gwynne or a Brandon Sanderson does, where you just picture what's going on in your mind. It plays out like a movie and makes his books very bingeable. So I started off with his series, The Queen of Thieves, with book 1, Child of the Night Guild. So this one's set a few hundred leagues south of Darkblade in another city that is ruled by a crime gang. The Night Guild, just a band of thieves. We're following someone as they basically go through a thieving academy in book 1, and just a dark fantasy story of a bunch of heists. So it's got vibes of Mistborn and the Nevernight Chronicles, but really dark, super compelling, very fast paced. You're just always going to get something that's going to grip you to the page. The second book in this trilogy is centered around just performing a massive heist, and then book 3 is basically saving the city against a rival crime gang that's from this guy's city. So it's very interesting, it's dark, it's easy to read, it's nice and simple. So if you're looking for some complex writing styles and world building, Andy's not your guy for that. He is just going to give you fun action in a dark story, in a dark, grim world. So when you want that, when you want something that's just easy to read, you're going to jump into that and you're going to have a great time. And the other series of his that I read this year was Dragon Blood Assassin. So if you want dragons, assassins, a couple of 2 different POVs going back and forth every single chapter in like the 24 series style. If you know the show 24, it's just a continuous TV series where there's just action constantly playing out, and it takes place over a very short time. Same sort of thing with Dragon Blood Assassin. It's just 4 books that play out back to back to back, where the scope of the story just continues to build and build and build. So if you want dragons, assassins trying to save a city, check it out. But that leaves us to number 1, and to this book buried right down at the bottom, which was this discovery of 2025, was Terry Pratchett and his universe, Discworld. I've read 4 Discworld novels this year, and that is not merely enough Discworld to satisfy my hunger for Terry Pratchett's writing and the stories that he can tell. Now, you might be looking at this cover and be thinking, that looks a bit goofy. What is going on there? That looks a bit wonky. And you're completely right in assuming that. Discworld is very goofy. It's very wonky. It's very mystical. It's very comedic. It's very cartoonish. But the way Terry is able to whip this world into something compelling, he's able to write characters that you're instantly able to connect to and understand, and be able to see exactly who that person is fantastic. He writes great characters, he writes compelling stories, and he's just able to put these things into a very wacky world that just feels so fun and refreshing. His comedy is fantastic. His social commentary is spot on. It's fun to have a book. It just makes for really fun reading because it feels fun and lighthearted, but there's always a deeper message on the next page. There's always a character you're interested in, you're invested in, always compelled to just read the next chapter or the next page because he writes compelling stories with good social commentary, with good humor, with good characters, and just this super creative world. And I can't wait to read more Discworld. So far, the books I've read are Going Postal, Raising Steam, Making Money, and Guards. So not the chronological order. Typically, it's not recommended to go in the chronological order. Usually people start with Guards, which is a good book. I personally preferred Going Postal, which is set even later than Guards. But the character in Going Postal is phenomenal. Moist von Lipwick is one of my favorite characters I discovered this year, and his trilogy of books was phenomenal. So I do recommend for any type of reader picking up some Discworld books, diving into Terry Pratchett's whimsical world of grumpkins and snarks, and seeing how he is able to just write compelling stories with good wit and good social commentary and just leave you thinking about something whilst you're also smiling, just having a nice, light, easy, whimsical time with his books. Guys, that is it for today's video. I would love it if you could tell me what are the best books you discovered this year. What are you hoping to discover next year with your reads? And while you're down there, make sure you like the video, make sure you subscribe. It really helps, and have a great day.